For many thousands of years, the ancient sages and mystics have spoken of demons and parasites within us. Though these demons spoken of do not exist as some form of external being, but rather the demon that resides within every single one of us born through a woman upon the earth. This demon is referred to as the ego. We have been raised to believe that our own ego is a natural process of human existence. That its own nature in conditioning its host, destabilizing our own mental and emotional states, and placing a great deal of endless ridicule and conditions, is a very normal process that we go through. According to the masters of the ancient times, this is completely incorrect. The ego is nothing more than an unnatural implant that exists within us. It is within our own genetic makeup and wired directly into our brain. Additionally, the ego, once inflamed with extreme emotion, acts as if we're an entity attached to us. One who is highly egotistical, for example, does not hear the voices of reason from others. They remain confined in the prison of emotional duress and mental anguish. The ego feeds off conflict, conditioning and highly charged emotional states. It exists to create boundaries and conditions that sabotages the body and delivers poor health mentally, emotionally, and physically. The ego could be considered as the greatest virus ever known to man. Not only that, but it is artificial and inorganic in nature. In other words, the ego is not a natural process of man. It was implanted into our genetic structure artificially spanning thousands of years in the past. Science has not yet understood this and may not understand it for centuries. Nonetheless, the ancient masters of our past knew this and were committed to aligning to self and abolishing the ego and every facet of its unnatural programming from their being entirely. If we look carefully into every act of violence and conflict within the world, ego has most certainly been the cause of it all. It is the seed of every battle and every act of tyranny. It is the apex of suffering within the world. For without an ego, the world would be without strife and conflict in every way. There are many who fear such conditions as cancer, diabetes, or heart disease. However, such conditions are minuscule compared to the inorganic parasitical nature of the ego that resides within the genetic structure of man. In fact, it is the ego that has created such sicknesses. Everything that is out of harmony with nature has been the product of an overinflated, energy-consuming ego. How do we eliminate such an inorganic parasite from our own being? How do we silence this demonic entity presence that seems to lust in keeping us in anguish, conflict and instability? It is as the ancient masters have shared. The fuel of ego is ignorance. This is truly what the ego feeds off. For as long as we stay ignorant to ourselves, others and the world, we provide nourishment to an out-of-control parasitical ego that becomes an inorganic, artificially intelligent entity of self-destruction within our minds. The ego at its core holds the coldest conditions of logic and shows no remorse to the one it dwells within or others that it deems are in its way. Therefore, our intention is to eliminate the food of ignorance from ourselves so that the ego starves and literally dies within our body. As it is denied any amount of energy from within ourselves, it cannot operate and will cease to exist within our own body and mind. To starve the ego of ignorance like one would starve cancer of sugars, we must learn the lessons of compassion, love and forgiveness. When we render all conflicts and conditioning meaningless within us, this is the beginning stage of starving a ravaging ego. The ego, however, is like a vampire. It will do everything in its power to coerce you in getting emotionally compromised. It will demand attention from you. One who is committed to eliminating the ego will see through the traps of this unnatural parasite. The decision to love and show compassion to yourself, to others and to the world is the key to laying a diabolical to rest. The ancient masters speak of ego death. As one aligns to the true nature of the self, they reach a higher state of bliss where they understand that death itself does not exist. You as an infinite being can never die and will live forever. You are omnipotent, omniscient and omnipresent. God and yourself are one. You are the I. This realization comes when you strip away the ignorance within yourself. You are no longer in denial, nor are you conflicted with earth-based conditioning that the ego thrives off. With continuous work, you learn to neutralize all blockages that once kept you at bay under the confinement of the inner demon that the ego is. Each day that passes, you become wiser and you see the traps the ego lays out, and you respond with neutralizing these traps by giving it no power and remaining steadfast with love, compassion and forgiveness. As we cultivate love daily, this is the antidote to an inflamed ego hellbent on causing suffering from within us. The ego wants to grow through an internal mental and emotional war with its host. This is how it grows and evolves. You cannot fight fire with fire when it comes to the ego, you will lose. Victory is assured by rising above everything that the ego is not. It is, of its own make, an artificial program, soulless in nature. And like a computer program, it can be deleted and can cease to exist. This is the ego death. There are a great many upon the earth that have no clue that the ego truly represents this unnatural, artificial parasite-based nature. You now know that this is the very heart of the ego. And through your intent to surpass it with following the natural path of love, your key to victory is the elimination of all ignorance that blocks your true connection between the conscious self and the true self. This does not mean that you must feel that you know everything or that you must be messianic in any way. What this means is that you have learned how to love and how to forgive. You have learned how to be free of the chains of conflict that you have put yourself through by letting the ego steer your ship into treacherous waters. Take back the control and be the master of your life, leaving the ego behind and letting it perish. It no longer has a presence as you have successfully starved it to death and eliminated it from your being entirely by working with the true natural energies of love. Each day you commit to this, you come closer to the liberation of the ego and the alignment to the true divine self. May it be well. Brad Johnson.